and welcome to the Growth Whisperers Podcast, where everything that we talk about is about building enduring great companies. I'm Kevin Lawrence here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I'm with my amazing co-host, Brad Giles, down in Perth, Australia. Brad, how's Australia treating you today?
Fabulous, excellent, wonderful.
Wow.
We have,
wow.
well, you know, as a world, we've been through some interesting things in the last few years. So, yeah, it is. You got to sometimes just take it for what it is. It's good to be here. It's great to be, not going through some other stuff that we've been through in the last few years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we have. It's been wild. Boy, we've lived through an interesting time in history. I mean, for lots of reasons, but even that, I was thinking about that COVID thing. It's actually about 3 years.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
About 3 years, roughly, since this whole thing happened. And holy, what a world. It was funny. It was on an airplane, on airplanes lots these days, but man, you would think that it never happened because 98% of people aren't wearing masks. They're like, it's like it was pre-COVID, which is amazing how resilient we are as a society. Anyway, awesome. Well, things going good here too. It's another great day in Vancouver, and excited to be traveling and spending time with clients again, consistently face to face, and kind of appreciate it more. Yeah. And I'm really appreciating. I love air travel. I just find amazing and boggles my mind sometimes how I can get up and have breakfast and work in one country far away and then land and have dinner in a different country. And I'm talking across North America, between Canada and the US, long distances. It's just amazing. So what's your word of the day, or phrase of the day, or thought of the day, or contemplation of the day, or just whatever it happens? What do you got for us, Brad?
I guess it's integrity. And yeah, there's just been a few examples across the radar in clients that we deal with where some suppliers perhaps and customers haven't really operated with the best integrity. And then also across the news, without digging into any particular examples, you are the sum of the integrity breaches that you produce or that you're involved with, and that's how kind of many people would measure oneself. So for me, integrity today.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to change mine because I had something different.
Yeah,
and I've also had a client who had a big integrity violation in their business. It happens all the time. We find them all the time, and it adds up to the tune of millions and millions of dollars, but it's not about the money. It breaks down a lot of trust and creates a lot of issues and a lot of headaches. So mine is the speed of trust. Stephen Covey's son wrote a book called The Speed of Trust years ago. And, I think I enjoyed the name of it better than the book. The book was fine. It just didn't. The thing that stuck with me was the principle was brilliant, which is when you have high trust, things flow quickly. And you don't have to send the follow-up email. You're not thinking, maybe I should consult my lawyer on this one before I take action, which was a conversation I had today. Maybe let me talk to my lawyer first. You don't have any of that. Things flow freely and easily, and that is the speed of trust. And it's amazing when you have a high trust relationship. And you got to be careful with them.
Yeah.
Because when you do have a high trust relationship and you don't have the right checks and balances, sometimes things start to get a little loose and people take advantage of it. And so it's wonderful to have the speed of trust. You just need to have at least the light touch on the double checks here and there, or as one of my clients calls it, drilling test holes. You don't have to inspect the whole wall or the whole structure. You just drill a couple of random holes and see what you find. You can do it in walls or in the ground.
We would call that trust and verify.
Thank you. Yeah, so the speed of trust is a beautiful thing, and we love it, and it's relieving, and it feels great. And a little verification tends to pay off. And often when there's some of these integrity issues, we wish we did a bit more verifying.
All right. So today we're talking
Yes.
about something completely unrelated to that, but still quite interesting. You know,
you could translate it to personal internal integrity, but that might be stretching it a bit.
Yeah. I can see why. I can see why you would say that. I can see why you would say that. Often, the two of us come across situations where leaders are, let's say, they're a bit disgruntled, or they've had enough of their business, and they're like, I just can't stand it anymore, or I can't take this. This is too much. And so what we're talking about today is digging into understand why might we start to feel like that, number one, and then what is a simple tool that we both use. And I think a variation of that is in your book, your Oxygen Mask First, Kev, around the energy that you're getting from your role, from the day to day. See, I was on the weekend on an island called Rottnest Island off the city here. It's about an hour's boat ride off the city, and I was sitting there and I was watching these very, very busy team of girls in the cafe. The cafe was pumping, and they were working as hard as they can to get all the orders out and everything. And I thought, it's good energy, and they enjoy the energy, but at some point they're going to fall out of love with that. They're going to be like, look, I just don't love it anymore.
Yep.
And everybody goes through that over time. There might be things that you enjoy about a job or a role at the beginning, and eventually you may actually come to loathe those things. So that's what I'm talking about today.
It is. And so I'll give an example. So the opening story in your Oxygen Mask First is a story of a guy named Nigel, and is a client of mine for years. And when I first met Nigel, he's from North Vancouver. He has a company called AquaGuard. When he would go to his business, when I was working, he's like, I got to sell this thing. I want out. I've had enough. He would put his hand on the doorknob at the back entrance of his building, and he'd feel like he was getting electrocuted emotionally because the business was draining him so much. It was just pulling everything out of him. And a long story short, he hated it like you wouldn't believe. And at the end of the day, we went and made some changes, including him buying out his partner, including in the end getting a president in place. And he still owns it to today. It's a great company, but he was getting drained by it, and a bunch of things needed to be fixed. And that's what this is about. How do you set it up in a way where you thrive and you get a great return on the energy you put into the business? And ideally, it even gives you energy back. But the problem is, when you build a company, people get used to doing and dealing with all kinds of challenges, doing a lot of things that they have to just grind on through. And, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And so that is needed. But at a certain stage, it's not sustainable if you're getting drained and beat up by your work all the time. And that's what this is about. So it's in chapter 4 of your Oxygen Mask First. And we just call it, your sweet spot, right? Investing in your sweet spots, putting more energy into the things that you thrive in, and finding ways to do the things you don't. And sweet spots defined as things that you love to do and you're good at it. Like it actually, you produce results. And finally, the environment you do it in. So I'll share an example. The last month has been a little bit hard for me. One of the people on my team I do a lot of collaboration with, he's had some stuff come up in his family, so he's had to not be able to help me near as much. Well, he and I collaborate all the time on things, and he helps me in our collaboration to get projects done, because he does a lot of the execution. I do the strategy and the thinking, and we team together really well. And I've got lots of other amazing people on my team that I also collaborate with, but he's kind of like the core person who gets the final product across the finish line. Because that is it's not just the work I do, it's the environment. The environment being collaboration with other people doing final execution. That works really well for me. But without that, it was notably harder, and it took a lot more energy. So it's not good or bad. It's just almost like a custom tailored piece of clothing. It's setting up things so you can spend a majority of your time doing things that you love to do.
Yeah.
And really thrive at, and only a little bit of time doing the things that are painful, or you kind of, we'll say, almost suffer doing. And that's why a lot of people don't thrive in their roles, or sustain in their roles, or burn out in their roles, because of the drain that the job gives them for whatever reason.
Yeah, if you were, let's say, in your teens or in your 20s, and there was a job that was good when you started, but it started to suck, you would find another job. But we feel that we can't do that when we own a business or we're senior executives. And what we're trying to say here is, if you don't find a way to exit the things that you loathe, or to outsource the things that you loathe, you're going to end up in an existential crisis, or you're going to end up in some kind of crisis where you're going to have to make changes, and it could be very expensive. For me, that was a reconciliation of accounts in my business. I don't know why. I just didn't really have a great passion for that, and matching receipts and all of that kind of stuff. And the other one was diary appointments. As you probably, like yourself, my diary is like a 4-dimensional Jenga puzzle, trying to slot things in everywhere. And it just drained my energy because it was so hard. And I wanted to respect the people who wanted to have meetings, but it's just so taxing. So I hired a bookkeeper and an assistant to enable me to do the work that gives me energy rather than drains my energy.
It's a great example, Brad, because in my case too, I can't schedule. And Janice has been with me for 20 years on my team. She's amazing. She owns my schedule.
Yeah.
One, because it's so tight and challenging, I'll mess it up.
Yeah.
And I got to deal with time zones and all kinds of different variables. Odds are. And it creates a lot of stress, and it is hard for her, but she's good at it. To her, it seems to be, it's like a game. Yeah. So I think the root of this is we all have different things. And the metaphor I say to people is, really, if you're going to have, and just taking a concept, you're going to have a house that's on 100 acres and it's this massive mansion on a house, you're not going to think about cutting the grass unless it brings you great joy. By the way, a couple CEOs I have, they love to get out in their property in their tractor and mow. That's like therapy for them. But if it doesn't bring you joy, and if trimming your hedges or weeding, if it doesn't bring you joy, and you've built a business that's doing a couple $100 million, you're not going to do it. Yeah. So if you have endless resources, sure. We want to take it back into just the reality of today, and even if you don't have endless resources, is that you can choose to do your role differently. Not every CEO role is the same or structured the same. Not every head of sales role is structured the same. You can leverage different strengths of different people to carve up the responsibilities to help make it thrive. And that's what this is about. This is playing with the Jenga that Brad talked about, and finding a way so that you can, a majority of the time, really, really enjoy what you're doing. And there are times when spending more can take care of it. We got that. But we're just trying to stay at the principle level. There's always people who like to do the things that you don't like to do. Yeah. And how do you find a way to trade? Now, whether you're trading with time, you're trading within different job responsibilities, or you're trading with cash, the challenging part I want to make is the point where people get hung up on this is that they don't believe it's possible. They're used to slogging it out for so many years that they don't realize that it could and should be easy and joyful in terms of the things that you're doing, although hard work. I'm not talking about kicking your feet up. So people don't even see that it's possible. People think that everybody suffers with what they do, and they don't. Yeah. Yeah. There's a leader that I work with, and I remember going to this meeting. We met at a cafe, and it was him and his wife. And as soon as I walked up to the table, I could tell, like, there was
like a negative black energy all around the place. And he'd been dealing with HR issues, staff who'd been yeah, let's just say annoying and really, the wrong kind of people, toxic, all of the stuff that we know. And this had just been draining him. And he said, I think I've just lost the passion for the business. I can't see where our next growth is going to come from. I just, and I don't even know if I want to do it anymore. And this is not unusual for you and I, Kev, to go into these type of meetings.
No.
And too common, in fact. And so I said, okay, so let's just begin with what's causing this. And we spoke about what is draining your energy. And he straight away went to the people stuff. Now, his answer was, I'm going to hire a general manager to come in and to run the entire business. Now, I reckon
let's make the people that drive me crazy somebody else's problem. I hear that one all the time. Let's just push it over there.
Yeah. But ultimately, you'll still be accountable at some level. There'll still be something there if you own the business. And so that was the answer that they'd come up with and they were working on. And I said, well, let's look at what gives you energy and what drains you energy. What gives them energy is the growing of the business, all the exciting new growth opportunities. What drains it is the people side. So what we did is we went through this exercise, what gives you energy, what drains you energy. We documented all of these things. And what we had there quite clearly was a people and culture manager role. And so we went to hire a people culture manager, and today they're in the process of hiring a people and culture manager. And so it's about understanding what is the role that I need to quit, perhaps.
It is, and everybody is different. It's getting the stuff that drains you. Interesting. And again, it often comes down to custom building your team and over hiring or hiring a notably stronger or different psychometric or psychological profile of a person. I had an interesting one, happens to be about people and culture as well, but I had a CEO that I worked with that generally didn't mind the people issues, but when it was legal issues and firing people, they had a problem.
Yeah.
And generally, whenever the CEO got involved in firing someone, it turned into a lawsuit.
Who would have thought?
Joke. Yeah. And because he was like, he's an awesome guy. I love the guy, but he had more lawsuits for dismissing of people than I'd ever seen almost on a per capita basis. Yeah. And I said to him, like, why are you dealing with all these legal issues? Oh, who is going to do it? And he goes, I hate dealing with it. It's always a problem, blah, 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 blah. And I go, yeah, it looks like it's a problem. You got a lot of lawsuits. Nobody has this many lawsuits. You got a gift. Long story short. And I go, well, who could he get to do it? He goes, well, blah, 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 blah. I said, at the end of the day, what if you had a really strong HR person? Could they handle it? He goes, well, I have one. Could they handle it? Yeah. How would you feel about that? Amazing. And I said, well, why are you still doing it? Because he goes, I thought I had to. And so at the end of the day, handed off this to the HR person who's well suited for this. They almost have no lawsuits now.
Yeah.
And he has way less stress because it drives him crazy. And he can invest his time into other things. So he was doing because he thought he had to. He had the person right there who could, which he gives it to now. And the HR person gets advice from the lawyer if needed, if it's a tricky situation. But they are no longer managing it and no longer in those meetings. And it saved the company a lot of money and a lot of friction. So there's lots of examples. Interestingly, there's a CEO that I work with for many, many years in the Middle East. And they had a specific area of the business they just didn't like dealing with. And they just made sure they had an extra strong executive own that place. Yeah. And they took one part of the business and put it under another. And the executive just handled it. And again, there's no way that you must do it. There's ways of making it suit you. And this ties back into the episode from last week about having the right people in the right places. If you have the right people, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. Heck of a lot easier because then you're not burdened by this, and they can own their roles, and you can have some flexibility, sometimes even move things around.
And I like the idea of thinking about it. You need to quit the components of the role that you're doing or outsource them, so that you can continue to add value at your price point. If you own the company and you're, to your previous point there, and you're handling IR issues, when there's someone who's well qualified, you could get to do that with a lot less cost in legal suits. Then you've got to make that move. We're predominantly coming at it from the angle of what do you love, what gives you energy, and what drains your energy. But it's also about the return on your time, on your investment of time.
It is. And I would argue that the return on your time is a piece for sure, but the return on the energy is the most important, because that'll allow you to sustain. And it's interesting. Why a number of my number of CEOs work with have a chief of staff.
Yeah.
And the chief of staff role is that person who is the capability of an executive who works beside you on your projects and coordinating things and making things happen across the company. It's also a great, one of the CEOs I work with is very, very strategic. An amazing strategic CEO, helps drive culture, helps get involved in big decisions, helps with recruitment and even selling and closing and big customers, or opening up doors for big customers. But the chief of staff is managing everything else, and the chief of staff is just amazing. It's so much easier working with him now that he's got a chief of staff. I love the guy, but the chief of staff makes the big difference. Again, for a really visionary strategic, the chief of staff pulls it all together. And again, that's another version that some people do to make it happen. So we got, a couple of the points, just to make sure we kind of back up a little bit. A couple of points saying, point one is don't sell the business just yet. Often people want to sell because the business is driving them nuts and drains them. It can be fixed. Normally, it's fixing people and expectations. Two, you got to believe it can be done, and you got to believe that you can have a business that you love. You just have to custom tailor it, and it might be structured and have people very different than you have today. We kind of talked about that a bit. And then three, and the exercise is to really be aware of what you love and loathe, or what energizes you and drains you, is the language I like to use. And the simple thing to do is just make a list. Like, start tracking, or look at your, what are the things I love doing and don't like doing? Like, for me, writing reports, oh my gosh, like I despise it. I will gladly pay someone else to do it any day, all day, every day. But if a CEO has a really challenging problem, I'm in. I'll do that before anything else. A massive conflict between two people, send me. I love big conflicts. Those are fun for me.
Yeah.
So people, challenges, brainstorming, math, analysis, like deep analysis of a high value, high stakes. Like, I love it. It's fun.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, you give me a piece of, paperwork that has to be dealt with, or, other stuff, and I want to poke my eyes out.
And there are people who are the absolute inverse, and that's the point. There are people who love the stuff that you don't love.
Yes.
And that's who we want to find.
Exactly. So lots of, but the main thing is, if you make a list of what you love and what you loathe, and then with the things that you don't love doing, how can you, do they have to happen? Can you stop them?
Yeah.
Can you get somebody else to own it? Or maybe there's a core issue under the surface that needs to get fixed. Lots of things. And it all comes down to the point number 4 is about people. People are the solution. And normally the biggest drain is people, and not having the right people in the right roles. That's the common thing. And right roles, or even having the right structure for those people. Go ahead, Brad. I kind of jumped on.
That's okay. To that point number 4, people are the solution. Jim Collins says that your first question should be a who question. And so energy, we're kind of saying, first of all, understand what gives you energy, what drains your energy. And then the first question, who can I get to take on the things that drain my energy? That's such a fundamental question. But then the fifth one, I'm sorry, go on, Kev.
No, let's roll.
The fifth one, we're not paying this as much weight as we should, but this is a forever project. Super easy when you're a teenager or in your 20s to quit a job. Yeah, this sucks. I'm out of here. that is super easy. We feel like we can't quit jobs when we own the business. And what we're trying to say is that you have to. This is a forever job. You've got to keep coming back and assessing what's draining my energy. How can I outsource that or get someone else to do that bit so I can focus on the stuff that gives me energy and retains my passion for this business?
Yes. And I was having a conversation with the CEO, so maybe 6 weeks ago, and they were saying, I just don't like what my company's become. I go into the office to meet with the team that's my executive and leadership team. He goes, I don't want to be there. I thought, why? Like, what's the issue? Well, I hired this executive and then they started building the team and they brought some other people with them. And I go, yeah, what happened? Well, I don't like this company. I wouldn't want to work here. I'm like, okay, well, in the end, because they brought the culture from somewhere else. And, and the CEO was entrepreneurial and they brought in corporate. Long story short, I said, well, what do you got to do to build a company that you want to be part of? Because if you don't want to be a part of your own company, that's a problem. He goes, well, I'd have to change this. And he named off the 3 things you'd have to change. Okay, great. Well, what's the one thing that will help you change all those things? And then he starts squirming. And he's finally like, I guess I got a text, was it a week after? Okay, well, I told this one key person that they need to go. And basically, there was a key person who did a great job for a period of time, but ended up building a different culture than the CEO wanted. And then I got a note from him more recently. He's okay, I'm taking back the reins in that part. We're going to build this thing, and this is going to be a company I love. But the root of it is that, it worked. What was working worked until it stopped working.
Yeah.
And that's the piece, right? You got to constantly tweak it. And even myself, I'm constantly tweaking things and trying different things because as you grow, your job changes.
Yeah.
Like you have different responsibilities. And sometimes people say, well, maybe I don't want to be the CEO anymore. I want to go back and I want to be the head of sales or something. I'm like, usually all that means is that it's not fitting right. They got to resculpt the role, redefine the role, maybe, tweak some things. There's always a way to make it work. You just got to spend the time to think about it and know that there is a way, although you might have to make some tough decisions.
Yeah. So if you feel like, oh, I want to go back and work in sales, it's because something's not working where you are. Our antidote or our quick and dirty tool is, so in your current role, what gives you energy, what drains your energy, make that list. And that's the beginning of building the role that will give you energy ongoing.
Yep. It's funny. And just as a closing thought on this, my family often kind of makes fun of me because whenever something needs to be done, I go, hold on, I got a guy, or I know a person. Like I know people to do everything. Yeah. Like I have learned, because there's a very few things I love to do. I get to spend 90% of the time, my time doing stuff I love. Close to 90% of my time in a week, both in my life and at work, is in my sweet spot. Like that's by design. I worked hard to find that.
Yeah.
But I also have on text, there's got to be 40 or 50 different people that I reach out for to do different things based on all my different responsibilities and where I work and where I play and where I live and all this stuff. I know people everywhere. And if in doubt, I always ask people, hey, do you know somebody that? Right? So it's who do you know that could? And it just makes life easier so I can stay in my sweet spot, having a strategic view of what I want to happen and finding a person to get it done.
Indeed. Very good.
Yes.
Very good. So if you want to live and work in your sweet spot as a leader, you've got to always come back to this question. What gives me energy? What drains my energy? Good chat there, Kev. And the key point there as well, don't sell the business yet. Ask that question, see what can be done.
Yes.
All right. I hope that you've enjoyed the episode today, talking about energy up and energy down and how to get to that sweet spot ongoing. We would love it if you could like and subscribe in your medium of choice. Of course, you can also find us on YouTube. If you prefer to see our smiling faces, just look for the Growth Whisperers on YouTube. And you can find Kevin and I. We have a newsletter that we both do, put a lot of effort into, in fact, each week. You can find Kevin's at lawrenceandco.com and mine at evolutionpartners.com.au. If you're interested in subscribing, we're always putting out interesting tips and things that we find about how to grow mid-market businesses and build companies that endure. So I hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. We certainly have. And hope that you can join us again next week on the Growth Whisperers. Have a great week.